Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
Listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Diesel just saw Diesel!
Joe Giammatteo.
I don't like the dancing. This is not going to be a dance marathon.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. But first, Ryan, I hear you've got something you wanted to ask us.
Yeah, last week we had a Jobber of the Week, so we kind of skipped our questions that we've been asking each other in rotation. So I have my question this week, since there is no Jobber to cover. So my question is, we've went over quite a bit which ones we've disliked over the last few years, but what is your favorite gimmick match in all of WWF? It doesn't have to be what we've watched so far, but restricted to WWF/WWE favorite gimmick match.
I will just go ahead and say that I have always been a fan of the casket match, especially the early days, like when I was a kid. Like, I totally bought into all that shit.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, that's kind of a rough one. For me, it's a three-way tie. Three things come to mind immediately, so I know that's kind of a cheater answer, but they're all somewhat hardcore. The Buried Alive match with Mankind.
Yeah.
Mankind getting tossed off of the thing and just falling, what was it? He fell like about 3 feet short of the hole, but he hit and skidded across the dirt into the hole. That was the first thing to come to mind. And then TLC matches. I always kind of liked tables, ladders, and chairs matches.
For me, my favorite has probably always been Hell in the Cell. Again, I'm a mark for The Undertaker for sure, and I thought that the Hell in the Cell fixed the glaring problem with a cage match. You have a cage match that's supposed to be the final match where you trap two people in there and make them go at each other, but then the finish is to climb the fuck out of the ring. I thought the Hell in the Cell did a good job of getting rid of the stupid part of a cage match and making it what it was actually supposed to be.
Yeah, taking out the door aspect of it. It's like,
unless you're Kane.
Yeah, I've always thought that was a little ridiculous, the whole climbing over the top thing. Like, I don't know. It made it so easy to point out the flaws in the delivery of the match, you know?
Especially when you had someone that would just be standing right next to the door that they could just say, hey, open that, and then walk out it. But it doesn't happen time and time again.
All right. Good one. That was, as soon as you said the gimmick match, I was like, oh, Jesus. But yeah, no, that was a good one. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on March 18th, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
I am ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. We're going to kick this off with some details on Shawn Michaels, that being Shawn's most recent beatdown. Apparently, Diesel spent some time recently beating on his best friend, Shawn Michaels, as well as Bret Hart and The Undertaker. But the only thing more interesting than that could be Billionaire Ted showing his true colors on Monday Night Raw. And we are not fucking around as we go straight to our first match of the night. The British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith with Jim Cornette, defeats Jake the Snake Roberts by countout in 4 minutes and 52 seconds. The Bulldog is already out and waiting when we kick this off, and that's a bit of a good thing. We can get that crowd pop for Jake. I have a feeling it might be the highlight here for him, but we will see. And that's just me being cynical. The match must have been recorded early because Jake doesn't look too bad at first. He's certainly not doing the zombie walk to the ring, and he's working as quickly as realistically possible to start. Note the qualifier there. We're going to keep this very realistic with old Jake and our expectations. The Bulldog was standing out to me more here, though, being a true professional and selling for Jake, making Jake look as good as Jake could have been made to look. But it's clear there are small miscommunications happening in the match. And the theme of this is going to be the British Bulldog dodging the DDT, doing what he can to evade its application. Jake goes down somewhat quickly, though, in this match. By the time Cornette comes in with the racket, I suspect that's to cover Jake being blown up and needing to catch his breath. That's just me. I don't have any official reason to think that, but that's kind of what it looked like. And that seems to be it. As the Bulldog takes control, Jake visibly struggling in certain spots. And thankfully, it doesn't take that much to throw rabbit punches and strut around calling for the DDT. He did manage to make that look okay. And then Jake does manage to apply it. And that's where things really start to fall apart for this match. Jake forgets his spot for this pinfall and has to readjust himself from one pinning position to another, so his legs are sticking out under the rope. And this is an important detail because Cornette then pulls Jake off of the pin by Jake's feet, and the referee apparently can't see that and so doesn't kick Cornette out. But Jake is pissed, and rightfully so, and kind of just stops thinking about things, I suppose, and rather than reattempting the pin on the Bulldog, who is still knocked out, Jake gets out his snake. And this is not the same albino-colored one from previous appearances, but a regular green one, and slowly goes after Cornette with the snake while the referee is counting. Inevitably, the referee calls for the bell, Jake keeps going after Cornette, and when the announcer gets on the house PA to call the match, that's when Jake realizes that he's been out of the ring and the rules apply, and he's lost the match. Jake gets a little pop holding the snake up as he continues to exit up the ramp, and Vince quickly moves us along to bigger and better things before we move along as well. Ryan, what did you think of our show opener?
Well, Jake the Snake Roberts has got a little bit better than when we first saw him, and I do mean a little bit. And I am going to give most of that credit to the Bulldog here. The Bulldog does a lot of just pulling Jake's weight around in this match to try and make it look okay. And it starts off, the King, Lawler, says that Jake slithers into the ring like a snake. And I'm thinking to myself, no, he didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? He fucking crumbled in there like a crippled old man. I don't know why he would even try and make it sound like he was elegant getting in the ring, because he wasn't. I did like Vince and Lawler bringing up this Mike Tyson versus Bruno match that took place, because I distinctly remember that match. I definitely watched it on the Cheater box, and it's one of the ones I remember. So that was a good callback for my memory. But as far as the in-ring work go here, it was what I said. It was the Bulldog doing what he could to carry Jake the Snake. I mean, there's even a point where Jake tries to do a hip toss, and oh man, it looks like he might need a hip replacement after that toss, because it was low, slow, and bad. And then commentary just gives up on the match too, it seems, as they just kind of start setting up random matches for superstars and next week's Raw, and they just kind of don't give a fuck about this match. And it makes sense, because even though you have what would be considered to most crowds a pretty big match with some ring veterans in there was just nothing to save this match. And you could tell by the crowd. A few months ago when Jake first came back, he got one hell of a pop from the crowd. And he did when he first made his entrance here, but you could tell he was losing the crowd as the match went on, because by the end he's trying to get his cheers from the crowd, and they're just not really interested anymore because of the terrible work, and and it ends with a cheap count out. So I have to say, all around, I was pretty disappointed in this match.
Yeah, this is similar to a Yokozuna situation. You know, it's like we love this guy, but he has no business being out there, especially on TV.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound like I'm attacking someone like Jake Roberts who has had issues, but I guess I'm more attacking the WWF for trotting him out there and essentially enabling, you know, hey, Jake, you're still a star, when he's just not, he shouldn't be there.
He looks terrible.
He looks like a bigger version of the Huckster. Like the guy that...
Wow, yeah.
I couldn't get past how terrible he looks. So just to put some things in perspective, I took some notes here. Jake Roberts is 1 year younger than Roddy Piper.
Wow.
He is only 2 years older than Bret Hart.
No shit.
He is 3 years older than Scott Hall and 4 years older than Kevin Nash. I mean...
He looks like he's 60
God.
in this episode.
And, you know, another thing, like you guys we're not watching WCW, but you guys know what kind of shape Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage were in 96. Yeah. They were in pretty good shape and could still go. Those guys are only like 2 years older than him. So, you know, we're attacking their age every single week in and week out on Billionaire Ted skits. And then you trot Jake Roberts out there. Like, it's just crazy. The match was horrible. It's almost like a nostalgia act, and it feels like a bad indie show that you would go to where they advertise these old stars that don't really wrestle anymore, like just to sell tickets. That's kind of what this felt like to me. Who's going to believe that Jake Roberts can kick anyone's ass, let alone the British Bulldog?
Who is kept in amazing shape.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All excellent points being made here. It's funny because whenever you were going over ages there, Jake the Snake is 2 years off of Bret Hart. He's within 5 years, I think you said, of Scott Hall and Diesel. That's the new generation. The new generation is more or less Jake the Snake Roberts' age in this.
Yeah.
And it's funny. The amount of mental gymnastics you have to go through in order to justify any of this, but
especially when we've spent almost 3 months now making fun of the age and balding of WCW.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's only 40 here. He's only 41 years old.
Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's shocking as hell.
We're almost 40. And I mean, I don't think I look like a Greek god or anything, but but I don't look like Jake Roberts.
You look more like the Nacho Man than you do the Huckster.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'm not saying that I'm fucking Adrian Adonis over here or anything, but I'm pretty sure I can work the ropes a little better than Jake the Snake does.
And 40, like in 2021, 40 is still pretty young for a wrestler.
Yeah. I mean, CM Punk, who just came back, he's got to be 40 now, right?
Yeah, there's several guys that are 40 that can still go.
Hopefully, like you say, it'll just stay a nostalgia act. Hopefully we don't get any like major bombshell, information about 6-man tag matches at WrestleMania or anything.
I mean, if anything, he played a big part in the Austin 316 promo. So, I mean, at least he gave us that.
Yeah, if he wasn't there for that, we might not have got the Austin 316. So
yeah.
Everybody focuses on the 316 I just whooped your ass line, but I always felt the stronger part was the setup for that, where he yells, "Get that sorry piece of garbage out of my ring."
Right.
So, well, we will pay attention and keep our listeners informed on further developments on Jake the Snake. Hopefully he stays cogent and with us for the next couple months.
We found him behind the dumpsters.
Let's move along and take another look at the training schedules of the competitors of
let's look at two guys who are actually in shape.
JR is going to do a voiceover for this once again, and after JR espouses the beauty of San Antonio, we're going to take a look at what Jose Lothario has been doing with Shawn Michaels. This was a pretty neat little segment, doesn't really add a whole lot to it other than some more sentimental stuff, but it was capped off by Jose instructing Shawn on giving some sweet chin music to a heavy bag. And Shawn managed to get some decent height with it. I would dare say that he could get that heel up to The Undertaker or Isaac Yankum's chin easily, so that's good. Next up is Bret Hart, Calgary's favorite son. And Bret's point here in his little spiel is that while Shawn got to rest after his, quote, little tussle in Syracuse, Bret's been getting his ass kicked for the past 5 months, and boy howdy, isn't that just the fucking truth. I did like that Bret capped his off, stating that if people should be looking up to anybody, it should be looking up to Bret. And that's it. It's a nice video package that wasn't overly dramatic. It kept to the kind of traditional sports training regimen style of video, and it just got to the point, and it was good. Ryan, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was a pretty enjoyable little video package they put together for the two. Goes along with what they were doing last week, where we visit Shawn Michaels with his mentor training, and then we go up to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we see Bret Hart jogging in the snow like Rocky and Rocky IV, and that was a good scene. And this time, Bret's teed off because his son has Shawn Michaels' hat and glasses that he likes to wear. But I will say this time, unlike last week, Bret was a little more respectful towards Shawn, but still the disdain for Michaels was oozing out of Bret Hart here. But he was definitely being a little bit more respectful this time, and I thought from both guys a great job.
The disdain just seems so natural, right?
Yeah, it really does.
This is still, in my opinion, the best way to get Shawn Michaels over as a babyface. If you want to get him over, I think this is the best way to do it. It's funny to me, though, that they're doing like this feel-good boyhood dream stuff, but then we're talking about a guy who is a male stripper gimmick. So it's just funny to me. Bret Hart, this is, Ryan, you're right. This is where Bret tells us that his son is a Shawn Michaels fan. This is pretty good stuff from Bret. It comes off much like a shoot, probably because it is. He definitely dislikes Shawn Michaels by this point. He might not hate him yet, but there is definitely some dislike there for sure.
Yeah. The biggest takeaway for me was how genuine just about all of it was. I mean, the Shawn Michaels segment was a little more fluffy, we'll say, a little more sentimental, but all in all, good stuff. Well, that package will take us into our next match. Goldust defeats Make a Difference Fatu by pinfall in 4 minutes and 39 seconds. My first question here is, how many different ways can you fit the phrase "make a difference" on a faux leather jacket?
Hey, you have no clue that's faux leather.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Good point. All I could think of was Putty's 8-ball jacket from Seinfeld. That's what it kept reminding me of, with the bright colors. And...
Yeah.
Well, let's ignore that, though, because we get a view of a woman in the audience wearing, what? Is that a Goldust t-shirt? She does the Goldust gesture and inhale when Goldust music hits. I was very happy to see that. Nice to see somebody in Goldust's corner besides Marlena.
Not to mention, I think this had to be a homemade shirt, because that looked way too artistic for something that is in the WWF shop right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Goldust has his cinematic style entrance, Marlena looking fantastic as usual. And my second question is, can you believe the audacity of Goldust wearing a kilt into the ring?
That's a skirt.
Fatu doesn't know what to make of Goldust, but once the work starts, it looks good. Things get a little weird as Fatu begins spanking Goldust. And for a minute there, I was taking this match seriously until that happened. Then out of nowhere, we get Rowdy Roddy Piper on the phone as we break to commercial, and as usual, it makes for a distracting situation for me. All of a sudden, the match is over, and I don't know where that 4 minutes and 39 seconds went. It doesn't feel like we spent that much time in it, but Goldust takes an extra couple of seconds to set up what he's using as his finisher. I'm not really sure what it's called, but once that's done, the count is 3 and the bell is rung. Goldust slinks over to Marlena as he exits the ring, with emphasis being put on the weird relationship between the two as Marlena and her pokies lead Goldust's undulating form up the entryway. So, like I said, for me, this match, it just felt like it blew by. Joe, what did you think of it?
Yeah, not much to say here. I mean, the fans and us, we got to see Marlena and Goldust in that entrance, which was nice.
Whew, Marlena.
Yeah, the cameraman was trying to get up that skirt really, really hard, but couldn't quite get up there. It seems like she wears something different almost every time we see her, and I think that adds a nice element to her gimmick. I do enjoy that. And the ass spanking, the shot to the nuts, like, I don't know. This was just a little bit of a goofball match, but I guess that's okay. Piper on the phone was kind of obnoxious, but there was nothing of any substance to it, really, at all. Like, it was a totally pointless phone call. It seemed like it was a little bit late when they got him on there, so I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, this match outside of Goldust and Marlena coming down to the ring was very forgettable. I like Goldust hamming it up to the crowd, especially with his kilt on. I thought that was a great touch, Goldust wearing this kilt down to the ring to just rub it in Rowdy's face a little bit more. You know, I loved that. And he got the crowd booing as he did his chest rub and breathe thing like 4 times. And he really got the crowd booing. And really, once the work started, didn't look bad. And then it just went straight to ha-ha comedy bullshit when Fatu hiked up the kilt and started slapping Goldust's ass. And then we just ignore the match and go to Rowdy on the phone, which, like you said, Joe, he had no substance. It was just him screaming. We've seen some good promos out of Rowdy since he came back here. It's probably tough to just do a recording like this and it not come off as stupid like it did, but it didn't really make sense. And then out of nowhere, Make a Difference Fatu just gets murdered. He gets finished. He gets to finish by Goldust and he's done. He got the jobber treatment here.
Yeah.
Pinned while someone was talking on the phone. The true jobber treatment. It was much shorter than I expected because we have 2 great wrestlers in the ring. So I was kind of expecting something a little bit longer and a little bit more entertaining, but we didn't get that. So a little sad about that.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add on this one. Forgettable is a great way to put it. Well, let's move it along now and take a look at the most reckless individual in WWF history, which I feel isn't accurate. There have been other more reckless individuals, one of which is still on the roster, by the way. And much like the Warriors' matches, this whole thing was over in a heartbeat. We went to look at the Ultimate Warrior, and like that, it was over. And we go back to the arena, where High Energy is playing, and Camp Cornette is entering the ring. Remember last week when that brawl erupted at the end of Raw? Well, apparently at Superstars this past weekend, Yokozuna, Ahmed Johnson, and Jake the Snake Roberts issued the 3-on-3 challenge to Camp Cornette, that being Owen Hart, British Bulldog, and Vader. Vince is there to interview everybody, and Cornette gets straight to it, answering the challenge with some decent lines, Owen and Davey Boy taking turns on the mic as well. Cornette then gets back on the mic and blisters Yokozuna, and also hints that he, meaning Cornette, threw Mr. Fuji down the stairs. That was pretty entertaining to hear. Vince gives us some pre-recorded comments, though, on the Proto-Titantron. This is a video package from Yoko and Ahmed and Jake the Snake, addressing Camp Cornette, revealing that a match stipulation was in the fine print of the match contract. If Yokozuna's team wins their Wrestlemania match against Camp Cornette, Yoko gets 5 minutes with Jim Cornette, presumably to cook and eat him. Before we move along, Joe, what did you think about the ongoing Warrior taint teasers, but more importantly, the Camp Cornette interview?
As far as the Ultimate Warrior, I wonder if anyone actually cares anymore at this point and how they're going to react. So I'm looking forward to watching that. And this interview with Owen Hart, British Bulldog, Vader, and Jim Cornette, to me was a little sloppy. Just the whole setup with everybody involved, Yokozuna, Jake Roberts, Ahmed Johnson. I thought the whole thing was a little bit sloppy. I don't like Vader being in a camp. It sort of diminishes his presence a little bit. The interview was just a bunch of guys yelling into a microphone when they were in there with Vince. Like, that's all it was. Just yelling into a microphone. I guess the point of this was to set up that 5 minutes alone stipulation. Again, that was kind of sloppy too, this video. Like, couldn't really see it. And then was that balloon supposed to pop when he did the bonsai drop on it? I think it was supposed to pop and it didn't. Like, I don't know. The whole thing was kind of a sloppy way to tell us that there's going to be this stipulation now on this match.
To start with the Ultimate Warrior, this is just a continuation of what we've seen for a few weeks now. It's just Warriors coming back. Let's show you this same video package of him doing no wrestling moves. So we'll move on to the Cornette, Bulldog, Vader, Owen Hart with Vince McMahon segment. And I thought Jim Cornette did a pretty good job of cutting a promo, both at the beginning and the end. Owen and the Bulldog, they did an okay job in their promo, but I thought Cornette probably did the best job here. But as you already mentioned, Joe, this was all a setup to let us know that there's a stipulation in the fine print that Yokozuna gets Cornette for 5 minutes alone if they win. All right, would Yokozuna even really need 5 minutes with Jim Cornette?
Can he even go 5 minutes?
That's right. I mean, that's longer than most of his matches.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he'd probably need about 30 seconds. He'd grab Cornette, slam him on the ground, squash him with a bonsai drop, and that would be the end of it. But okay, I mean, this was a little bit of filler. It wasn't terrible, though. I thought it passed the time just fine.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. But something that the Bulldog said during his interview segment made me think of a question I kind of just wanted to throw at you guys real quick. It's a hypothetical. One of the things that the Bulldog said is that Ahmed Johnson has been regarding himself being Ahmed, as the most, and I forget exactly how he puts it, but the most chiseled, the most in shape, the strongest wrestler, superstar on the WWF roster, which the Bulldog takes issue with, and the Bulldog says that he's the best, most in shape wrestler on the roster. What do you think a match between Ahmed Johnson and the British Bulldog would look like if we removed all of the other storyline drama happening here?
I think it would look like the British Bulldog being out for 6 weeks with a back injury.
Yeah, slipping on baby oil. But you talk about this, like them, him saying, Ahmed, you think you're the most chiseled man. Where do we hear that? Like, what? Yeah, it's just out of nowhere. It's not like we have heard him say that. Not saying that he wouldn't, but like, why don't they have him tell us that? Build some sort of story around Ahmed Johnson outside of him just destroying people literally in the ring.
Maybe that's something we missed on Superstars, but yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get a cinematic style WrestleMania 12 commercial highlighting the Iron Man match right after that. And we'll come back from that to the sounds of Hava Nagila. It's our next match. Diesel defeats Barry Horowitz by pinfall in 2 minutes and 9 seconds. We'll take a quick peek at Madison Square Garden for a house show where Diesel and Shawn Michaels, as a tag team, took on Bret Hart and The Undertaker, which ended with Diesel laying out everyone with a chair, his best friend Shawn Michaels included. This is what we referenced at the top of the show there.
Not his best friend.
Oh, no. Friendship. Back in our match, Diesel comes out making that same sign that the 1-2-3 Kid was making the last time we saw him. That sure is weird. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've seen Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels making that sign sometimes too. I wonder what it means. I mean,
but Diesel's a loner. He's not friends with anyone.
It's probably a coincidence. We'll take a commercial break to pitch 1-900 Shameless. And as the bell rings and the match in the ring starts, we'll get video footage of last week, Diesel beating Paul Bearer. Finally, we get to actually looking at the ring with the match currently in action, and Diesel is more or less beating the shit out of Barry Horowitz. But then we get a view of the grotesque Paul Bearer wheeling a casket down to the ring. Vince is on commentary, and he is flipping out about how that just has to be The Undertaker in there. I thought it was hilarious that Diesel was watching Paul Bearer while still casually beating the shit out of Horowitz. At one point giving Horowitz a sidewalk slam and acting like it was the easiest, least important thing in the world while he's focused on that casket. He didn't even look at poor Barry while dishing out this beating. But Diesel does drop his guard long enough for Horowitz to come back, and Barry gives it all he's got. All he's got, though, isn't enough, as Diesel gives him the big boot, attempts a pin that Horowitz shakes off in two, but then Diesel, with one hand, holds Barry's head down, punches him with the other hand, and then uses just his hands to pin him again to give him the 3 count and the victory, all while paying attention to the casket more than he's paying attention to Horowitz. But this story isn't over yet, as Diesel grabs a wrench from the timekeeper. Is that what the timekeeper rings the bell with? A wrench?
I would have thought a hammer.
Same here. And he grabs the wrench and heads over to the casket and just so gingerly opens it, only to see the body of someone that really did look a lot like Diesel laying under a layer of plastic inside the casket as the bell tolls over the arena. Obviously, this freaks Diesel the fuck out, but what's more impressive is how Vince sold this, losing his shit about
Diesel just saw Diesel! Diesel just saw Diesel!
I thought he was going to have a stroke. And that's where I will end this segment. I don't know what to think about all of this. It's a little bit gaga, but at the same time, a teensy bit entertaining. Joe, what did you have on it?
I am going to talk about the match, but I do want to talk about these MSG highlights. So Diesel turned his back on Shawn Michaels before WrestleMania, and that tells me, I guess, a few things. Like, I guess they're showing this because they want to highlight that, you know, anything can happen at a house show, so you should buy house show tickets. It's almost like the second time we've seen this with Diesel involved. The first time was when he won the title. But it's almost as if, no, it's not anything can happen on the house show. Anything can happen at Madison Square Garden, so you should go to those shows because there ain't shit happening in Youngstown, Ohio on a Wednesday night. But also makes me think that since Kevin Nash gave his notice already, I'm thinking him or Shawn Michaels or both decided, hey, let's work together one last time before you leave. And so I kind of wonder if they sort of rushed this. And also, Diesel and Undertaker already got their hands on each other at that match. So, like, why do we even care? Why do we care about the match at WrestleMania now? I just noted those 3 things from seeing those MSG highlights out of nowhere. Is Diesel a heel? Like, I still don't know, because he's getting pyro. He's coming out doing the click symbol, the too sweet thing. I don't know if it's maybe because of the timing of the taping or what, but it's still confusing to me. We're not even a minute into the match, and Paul Bearer is already making his way down there, so the match is pretty much useless. I did like this stuff with the fake Diesel in the casket. I think that Kevin Nash really sold it pretty well, but like you said, Jason, Vince McMahon just ruined the whole thing. I mean, he was just overselling like he always does, but this was just too much.
To start with the Madison Square Garden stuff, to me it almost seemed like now that Diesel gave his notice that he's going to WCW, Vince said, we are going to make you as much as a heel as we can in the next 2 weeks leading up to the match then.
Yeah.
Because that's what it seemed like to me. He's turning on his best buddy, Shawn Michaels, and it seems like they're just trying to do whatever they can to make him the heel now. He's kind of shedding the tweener role. But as the match started, unfortunately, Barry had no chance. You know, from the beginning, he's just getting annihilated in the corner. Then Paul Bearer wheels the casket down, and, you know, Bartlett, like you said, Diesel just continues to nonchalantly just beat the shit out of Barry Horowitz as he looks at the casket. For like 2 minutes, he's just looking at the casket and continuing to beat the shit out of Barry Horowitz. If anything solidified Horowitz's fall back to jobber status, it was this finish. Horowitz kicks out of a near fall, and all it takes is Diesel to grab him and punch him once. And that's enough to get the 3 count as he's still staring at the casket. So, sorry, Barry Horowitz, we barely knew you, but you've been buried to hell as a jobber here.
Even with entrance music, too.
Even with entrance music and you patting yourself on the back. I'm sorry, Horowitz. It's done. It's done. Put a fucking fork in it. But the ending to this match, I thought was really good. I wasn't exactly sure where it was going to go, but when they opened up that casket, it looked like Diesel. Diesel saw Diesel, goddammit. I don't know if this was footage that they maybe recorded earlier for the home audience that they cut to real quick when they showed that up-close shot of Diesel in the casket, because it looked a lot like Diesel. I don't know if the people in the audience saw the same thing up on the Jumbotron or whatever, but I thought it looked really good, and I thought it made a really great ending to this match, because I was surprised at how much this either stand-in or whatever looked like Diesel, and I thought Diesel played it off pretty good. So even though this was a squash match and it killed Barry Horowitz's run from ever happening again, I thought the ending of it was pretty good.
I think that was the Bret Hart head that Hakushi had. I think they just redesigned it into Diesel.
I'm wondering, like, we're not too far away from Glenn Jacobs playing the fake Diesel. Was that him in there, maybe?
I don't know.
I don't think so, because that was the first thing that I thought, too, and I really tried to look while it was on the screen, and I think they maybe might have just edited in some footage.
That's what I was thinking, too, because it really looked like it was Diesel.
Yeah, or it was just some really good prosthetic shit that they did, but I kind of doubt that.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of editing magic here.
Yeah, I agree. Ryan, something you said made me think of something to ask you guys. You said Barry Horowitz, he kind of rose above jobber status in his Intercontinental run there, and that was a good time watching that. But now you say he's dropped back to being a jobber, even though he has his own music. Does having your own music count if that music is part of the public domain?
I think they try and use the public domain for a lot of this music, though, right?
You always hear about how Vince is all about having the intellectual property rights to everything they create.
That's
so
true.
Everybody's got a Jim Johnston masterpiece, but old Barry is coming out to the Jewish equivalent to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
I guess that's just music you can't own, so there's nothing he could do about it.
Yeah.
Kind of like in the song that Vince gives to every Asian style wrestler or gimmick.
That's probably a public domain song.
Yeah. Well, next up, we get a peek at the $1 Million Man backstage with Tatanka and the 1-2-3 Kid. And the camera is promptly chased out of the locker room by DiBiase. That leads into a quick smattering of different video packages all stacked on top of each other. And then it's over to the Karate Fighters Slam of the Week. This time it's Mark Henry putting Jerry the King Lawler up into a full military press and then dropping him. And then we get another 2 seconds of Diesel attempting to exit the arena, walking with a raised fist holding the wrench like he expects the Undertaker to arrive any second. It was somewhat out of place with the way that this show and this segment was flowing with all of these just little things crammed together here. Then after that, a petting zoo voiceover, and I had to rewind this to make sure I understood what was being said, but we find out that before WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels has to prevent a potential nightmare by battling Leif Cassidy of the New Rockers. I'm not sure how that's preventing a nightmare, but I'll go with it.
Another Al Snow botch.
Speaking of botch, we're also going to have Ahmed Johnson. He's going to take on Owen Hart, and both of those matches will be next week on Raw. Before we move along, Joe, what did you think about this kind of large-ish mix of information we got between matches here?
Well, who the fuck is Leif Cassidy? We don't even know. We do now, but...
Al Snow, what do you mean?
Yeah, on this episode, if you're watching, we don't know who he is.
Avatar, what do you mean?
Yeah, Shinobi. And Owen Hart probably won't make it to WrestleMania. And if he does, he's going to have to take some time off after WrestleMania after he suffers a severe back injury next week.
Yeah, I'm going to start with just wishing Owen Hart the best of luck next week in his health. But we get the slam of the week with Mark Henry. This was footage we saw last week, I believe, already. They showed us, but okay, we're going to continue with these slams. Hopefully they get a little bit better. Shawn Michaels taking on Leif Cassidy. This is before we even saw a single match of the New Rockers. Leif Cassidy is already branching off as a singles wrestler against Shawn Michaels. I thought that was a little bit odd, and I'm not sure I'm looking forward to it based on Al Snow's prior 2 matches that we've seen. So we'll see what happens there.
Old rocker versus new rocker.
Yeah. Before we see the New Rockers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just such strange stuff. And I agree. It's really weird that this person that we haven't seen in a match yet, and who also is part of a tag team, all of a sudden is taking on the number 1 contender for the heavyweight championship, and also Vince's darling.
It's because they're putting all of the tag matches on Superstars or dark matches. They don't give a shit about it. So yeah, and then we just get this random guy versus Shawn Michaels. It's just strange.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that they didn't bring up the whole Rockers angle with this. I mean, I know we're trying to focus on Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match, but...
Yeah, I would imagine next week.
Oh, Vince is going to talk about it the entire fucking match.
Rocker versus Rocker.
Yeah.
Jannetty through the barbershop window.
Well, he threw himself through that window.
All right. Let's go now into our final match of the night. Bret the Hitman Hart defeats Tatanka with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, by pinfall in 8 minutes and 48 seconds. This match starts off with energy as Bret and Tatanka go at it, Tatanka selling Bret's dominance pretty well, and the work is looking good. Nothing much to note, other than while it isn't flashy, it is flawless for the most part, and that seems to be the trend with Bret Hart's matches of late. Whenever he's in there with a good opponent that can keep up with him and work with him, the matches are never flashy, but they are almost always flawless. And then the 1, 2, 3 kid comes walking down to the ring, and, at first I was like, oh, great. This shit's gonna happen. But then that thinking just completely got erased from my mind because, my goodness, I don't know if it was the camera angle or what, but the kid looked even skinnier than usual here. He looked like he was like maybe the diameter of a ring post. He was just skinny and frail looking. But just the kid's presence is enough to distract Bret and give Tatanka the upper hand as Tatanka takes control in the ring. That lasts long enough for Tatanka to get Bret in a headlock, and as Bret breaks it and tries to rally, Tatanka stalls that out and attempts a pinfall. It's only good for 2, but when we get back up into rope work, Bret puts a nice reversal onto Tatanka, a grab into a roll-up pin. That's only good for 2 as well, though, as Tatanka follows it up with a good-looking clothesline. That takes us into a commercial break. We come back, and it's time for Bret to take control. Side Russian leg sweep, atomic drop, that top rope elbow drop. And just as Bret is attempting to apply the sharpshooter, the $1 Million Man distracts the ref. The 1, 2, 3 kid grabs Bret and attempts to hold him to the ropes for Tatanka, but of course, Bret dodges Tatanka's oncoming attack. Tatanka ends up knocking the kid off the apron, and the shock of the situation is just too much for Tatanka to handle as Bret rolls Tatanka up, gets the pin and the 3 count to secure the victory. Bret takes some time in the ring to hoist the belt for the crowd, and the crowd loves it. This is the most we've seen of camera time devoted to Bret just kind of not strutting, but just giving back to the crowd a little bit and kind of feeding the energy than we usually get. We usually, move on quickly past him once he's done. There is more to come in tonight's episode, but before we get there, Joe, what did you think of our final match of the night?
Well, it's kind of just a random bullshit match just to so this crowd can see Bret Hart. Because Tatanka sucks. He's awful. The whole stable is awful. The $1 Million Team or whatever the fuck they're called. The kid coming out, I immediately groaned, like you said as well. But I thought that it was pretty clever to help put Bret Hart over, because now you're having him essentially having to take out two guys. And I think, and he was certainly able to do that. I think it helps sort of put him over going into that Iron Man match. He looked like an Iron Man in this match.
So I didn't think this match really looked too bad, even from the beginning. And, Tatanka, he's not great, but when he's with someone like Bret Hart, especially, he could look decent. And that's what I thought this match did. It was Bret Hart really carrying this match with another ring veteran who maybe isn't quite the caliber of Bret Hart really ain't quite the caliber by any means, but I think he was good enough to work with a great like Bret Hart and put together a pretty entertaining match. Towards the beginning, we learned that next Sunday on WWF Mania, there's going to be an exclusive music video with Bret the Hitman Hart. And I don't remember that at all, but I really, really hope they show that on Raw next week, because I'm interested in what the fuck that is. As far as the match goes, though, it was pretty by the books, and then we see the kid come down, and I think like both of you, I kind of groaned at that point, hoping that this wasn't going to get too off the rails, and it didn't. That caused Tatanka to take over briefly and allowed him to apply a chokehold for the commercial break, but once we come back, Bret reverses things, and we get all of the great spots we want to see out of Bret Hart. We get the side Russian leg sweep, we get the flying elbow, and Bret is looking like the Bret we love. Of course, the heel here tries to cheat. The kid tries to set up the victory with Tatanka, but Bret Hart is able to beat both of them. He's able to overcome even the interference in this match and come away with a win. So I thought this was not a great match, but I thought it was a solid ending to Raw. We got to display the champ here. He showed what he could do, even with the odds against him with two people. And then he showed off the belt a little bit for the crowd. So I thought overall it was pretty entertaining. But I paused it at that moment, and unfortunately I saw that there were still a few moments left and that this was not the end.
Yeah, it's not. You make a really good point, though, about having Tatanka in here with Bret, making Bret look strong. I felt they worked pretty well together, all things considered. And yeah, Joe, you're absolutely right. Tatanka is not top of the card level talent in the least bit. But in this case, in this context, this is probably the best kind of Tatanka you can get helping to prop up Bret. As Ryan was talking about that, I was thinking, well, what if we flipped it? What if this was Tatanka in the ring with Shawn Michaels? It would have been the drizzling shits, I think. As good as Shawn Michaels is, I think Tatanka would have just ruined it. But with this, with Bret Hart's kind of...
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean...
You don't think so?
Well, I've just seen Shawn Michaels extract a good match out of King Kong Bundy. And after that happened, I have all faith in Shawn Michaels being able to put together a good match with just about anyone.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
As fast as Shawn is, because that's kind of what made me think that that's why this match looked good, because Bret's style is more of a slow, methodical, wear them down type style, which works with Tatanka's kind of plodding brawler type of thing. But it feels like Shawn Michaels would just run circles around Tatanka, and Tatanka wouldn't be able to keep up.
I've seen Shawn Michaels in enough matches now that I think he might adapt to it in a way that would make the match still look great.
No,
well, they had a match at WrestleMania 9, Bartlett, if you want to go back and watch that entire WrestleMania.
WrestleMania 9?
Is she from Oklahoma?
Also, I hate to burst you guys in your bubble and your love for Tatanka, but can you guess what news I'm about to reveal?
Tatanka is fired.
This will be Tatanka's last match on TV.
Well,
it's a good way to go out, I guess.
Fighting with the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
Yes. Good riddance.
Well, something that I really wish that we could say good riddance to, but we can't yet. Billionaire Ted. And this is the segment that is going to end our episode of Raw. This is going to be the Federal Turner Commission hearings. This is going to focus on the Time Warner merger, which would make Billionaire Ted the most powerful man in America. This is done in a movie-like style, most of which takes its cue from the courtroom scene from the movie A Few Good Men. Very topical in its application here. This Billionaire Ted, though, isn't the stuttering idiot from the previous installments, but instead is a deliberately evil individual, again, modeled after Jack Nicholson's role in A Few Good Men during the courtroom scene. But still, it stood out that this really portrayed Billionaire Ted as fucking evil, as opposed to the goofy moron. This visual ends with Billionaire Ted finally saying that he wants to put the WWF out of business, and that gets followed by a text graphic on the screen telling viewers to write into the Federal Trade Commission in advance of the upcoming FTC hearings about the Time Warner merger. And that is where we fade to black. Joe, what did you think about this sinister depiction of Billionaire Ted?
Well, I never thought I would say this, but I kind of miss Todd Pettingill giving us WrestleMania reports.
I would
week.
take it any day over this.
Yeah. Yeah, this was horrible, like it always is, and it was a little different, like you said, because it wasn't a skit that was, I guess, a goofball type skit. This was a more serious one, I guess. Like was this even supposed to be funny? I'm not even sure. I know the other ones are clearly supposed to be funny, even though they're not. But yeah, this was really bad, and wanting us to write to the FTC, like, that is just sad and pathetic.
Yeah, this was terrible like the rest of them, and they tried to put it to a Jack Nicholson Few Good Men template here, but that just fell flat like the rest of these segments have. It was, again, just sad, like I've said week in and week out. This was a pathetic display of, I don't even know what to call it, a pathetic display of just patheticness. And then they give us a person and a place to write to so that we can protest the merger of Time Warner for Vince and the WWF because we should feel so bad for them.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify that text graphic that ends things, it isn't just telling the viewers to write in. It gives the address of the FTC commissioner, I think is who it was, the head of the FTC, his address in Washington, D.C.
It's public information, I guess, but still, yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily the fact that they're giving out an address, but also kind of the fact that they're giving out a fucking address. Like, they couldn't just say right to the FTC.
If they were giving away a house again, maybe I would send one in.
Well, as I said, that's the end of our episode. So let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you go first?
So my highlight is, I think I'm going to have to go with the final match here with Bret Hart versus Tatanka. I thought it was a very solid match between two veterans, and it was a decent way to end Raw. It was nothing too exciting, but better than a lot of the matches we had to offer tonight. Lowlight, Jake the Snake versus British Bulldog match. Jake the Snake just fucking looked terrible. Bulldog tried to carry this match as much as he could, but there was nothing that could happen to overcome just how terrible and out of shape Jake the Snake looks. So definite low light there for me.
My highlight is sort of two things. In particular, the build up for the Iron Man match. I still think it's one of the best build-ups for a match that we've seen in 3 years. And the fact that we are seeing these guys wrestle someone pretty much every week, A couple weeks ago, we saw both of them wrestle in one episode of Raw, which is great. So just that whole build up for me is the highlight here. The low light for me, I'm going to also say Jake the Snake Roberts, because I don't know if you guys see it as much as I do, but he can barely get in the ring.
Oh, he's terrible.
Like,
Yeah.
It's,
what do you mean? He got
really,
in there like a snake.
Right. And then Lawler says he slithers in there. And I'm like, I wonder if he's doing that
Just to bust his balls.
to bust balls. I have to think he is, because my God, the guy can barely get in the ring.
Oh, my hip.
Yeah.
I'm going to fall in line with Ryan here for highlights and lowlights. Highlight being the final match, Bret Hart and Tatanka. Lowlight being Jake the Snake Roberts and the British Bulldog, for the exact same reasons that have been stated already. So, that being said, Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around March 18th, 1996 for us?
I do have some news here, along with all of the shenanigans with the four main event guys at that Madison Square Garden show. There was a 4-star match between Savio Vega and Goldust on that show. So unfortunately, we did not get to see that. Something we did get to see, Dave Meltzer comments that Jake Roberts really showed his age. He looked very old and slow in the ring, although
40.
his name and charisma are still there. 40. This is 40. They are teasing Mr. Fuji returning as a babyface manager for Yokozuna to feud with Jim Cornette. That should be exciting. Vince McMahon was on the Chet Kopek show. I'm not sure who that is. I had to look it up. He's a sports radio guy from Chicago. Vince McMahon was on Chet's show and did the same basic complaining about how unfair it is that Ted Turner is doing to him what in many ways he did to everyone else.
Schnarr.
It is expected that after the Germany tour, which is taking place after WrestleMania, that Bret Hart will take an extended hiatus to concentrate on acting, as he has offers to do more episodes of Lonesome Dove.
Oh.
And we are going to be doing our WrestleMania show. Our podcast will be all three of us in the same room, which is very exciting. Looking forward to it. Bartlett, while you are in town, you guys mentioned about possibly checking out some comic book stores around this area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, during this time, Jim Hellwig released a Warrior comic book, so maybe you guys can maybe try to find some of those.
I've heard the legend of that comic book.
Destrucity.
Well, you should see if you can find some out in the wild here in a couple weeks. And that is all.
Thank you, Joseph. It was illuminating as always. I wonder how many editions or issues of that they had to pulp by the time all was said and done.
They're probably all buried with the E.T. Atari game.
And AOL CDs.
Yeah.
All right. That's it, folks. We're done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on March 25th, 1996, with matches featuring Aldo Montoya, Leif Cassidy, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.